our guest of honour, who hopefully will be doing more talking than I will. There's no one as excited as I am. We have today in our midst a Crusader, one of Ireland's greatest ever female middle distance athletes, an Olympian, but the only Irish female to ever make the final of the 800 metres in the Olympics. So Caroline, you are very welcome. And I'm going to get us started by just asking you how you got into the sport and what was your first introduction to athletics?
So I suppose from a very early age, I knew I was pretty good because we lived in a kind of cul-de-sac, and we used to race against the boys, and I used to always beat the boys. So that was always a good start. And there was local sports in Kimmage Manor. They used to have a sports day every year, and I went around and competed in that, and I did pretty well. So there was a group of girls who were slightly older than me, just a year or two, who were members of Crusaders, and they said, "Oh, come down." So I joined Crusaders in 1971 at age 10. And you know, I was with it from then. Crusaders was in Serpentine Avenue at that stage. We were training on the grass hockey pitches with Pembroke Wanderers, and always loved training on the grass. It was very good. So that was my first introduction to athletics. So I even from when I started off, I did well enough in the Dublin Championships, under 11s, so I would have medalled at that stage, but got my first injury when I was 11 as well. It's a developmental thing with knees, so I was out, had to rest for about 6 months when I was 11, would you believe?
Wow.
And then came back in age 12, and then went on and didn't get too injured again until 1977 probably, yeah. So that was it. But I should say I started off as a sprinter and had only really started doing middle distance by the what was the end of my career, which kind of ended earlier. So I started off doing hundreds and 200s, and I would have been running those up till I was 15, and then I started running 400s at that stage. And 1984 was really my first season running 800. I had run 2 in 1982, but then I only ran 2 in 1984 and qualified for the Olympics in the second one. So although you call me middle distance runner, I was only beginning to learn the trade, in 1984. And I never, as we discussed the other day, ever got to run a 1500. So 400, 800 runner is,
really your forte.
Really where I spent most of my senior career.
Yeah. And when would you have been first got an international best? What age, Caroline, can you remember?
15, just 15 and a half. So I was one of the youngest, but not the youngest. I think Bridget Corrigan, the high jumper, holds that record. She was about a month younger than me. So that was one of those triangular competitions. I think it was Wales versus Ireland versus somebody else away in. I started off, and they're not as regular now, but there were always, because there weren't as many international meets that people went to and got invitations to. A lot of international competition was team events, so there'd be the European teams competitions now, but there would be internationals, so Belgium, England, Wales, Scotland versus Ireland. We'd run a lot of those, and they were great. I like those because a lot of meets now just have maybe all track, but in those meets was team competition. So the pole vaulters, the triple jumpers, all the field, full men's and women's teams, would get to go. So it was very inclusive and good.
It's fun as well.
But 15 and a half, yeah.
Yeah, you were so young. And out of curiosity, you stayed in Ireland both running and working. Were you ever offered a scholarship abroad at that stage?
Yes, I was, yeah. When I left school, first of all, I actually went in and worked in AIB for a year, and then I left and went to Bolton Street. But I was offered a few scholarships in the US, but I didn't go chasing them. And the reason was that I'd had pretty difficult time with injuries. So I left school in 78. So 77 was the European Juniors, and I would have been, you know, third ranking or something in that. And I was under 18 in those days, the juniors, but I got injured and I couldn't go to it. So that was one injury. And then in 1978 as well, I qualified for the European seniors and got injured. And
that was all in sprints, wasn't it, Caroline? You weren't.
That was 400. That was all 400.
400.
Yeah. So I broke the national record. Actually, in 1978, in the middle of my leaving cert in the Netherlands. So I was 17 then. It was great because Michelle Walsh broke the Irish 100 and 200 record. I broke the 400 record, and I think Michelle she's in the middle of her leaving cert too. But I did my accounting exam in the morning. Finished on Friday. Went to the airport. Came back, flew back on Sunday night, and they did my chemistry exam on Monday morning. But I think Michelle did art.
Oh, wow.
She had a few days extra to study. So, So anyway, the reason why I didn't go to the States is because I reckoned I was pretty versatile, so I could sprint and I could do middle distance, and I reckoned that I'd be running all events, including cross country, which I never really did, and road. I could have done anything, and I reckoned that. I would come under pressure to do more competition and more training than would suit me, and I thought it wouldn't be good for me as an athlete to do that, and so I didn't go for that reason. I was well looked after here, the good coach Mick Purcell as well. And the other thing was at that time, CUSPOR, which was the Irish Sports Council as it was at the time then, had grants to encourage athletes to stay here. So I got that grant, and they were very good to me. They continued with me during my 4 years in college, and even 1980 when I got injured again. That was a bad one. That was ankle injury, and I missed the Olympics, and I only ran one race that year, and that was the League Cup final for Crusaders at the very end of the season. I won the 456.6. And I had been hoping to qualify for the Olympics, so it was a pretty awful time. But they stuck with me, which was very good. And in 1984, I was pleased to have been able to pay back their support for me, over that time. It really made a difference.
It's gas because you're saying there, I had such a bad run running 56 seconds for 400, and people here looking aghast going, for 400 meters in 56 seconds, 400 meters. So Caroline's PB, well, that I spotted somewhere, Caroline, and do correct me if I'm wrong, your PB for the 400 was 53.24 is what I have. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
And then your 800, which was your second 800 ever in your life competitively, was 2:0.70.
Yeah. So I had run 2 800s in 1982 just for something. It must have been, I can't even remember them, to be quite honest, and knew I'd always move up. But in 1984, I'd been training very well, and my times had come down from 1980 down to 1983, and I was hoping to qualify for the Olympics in the 400. So I'd run a 52.9 relay split and 53s back in 1983, and then in 1984. Running international in Lisbon, and again I didn't break 55 seconds, so I just thought, what am I doing? And Dublin Championships, so I decided I would try and get out of my headspace and do something else, and ran an 800 and ran 2:05, and then the national record at the time was 2:02.8, and the Olympic qualifying was 2:02 something or other. 2:02 flat, I think, perhaps, and Cork City Sports was coming up, so I thought I'm going to switch. I'm going to try the 800. And I ran the 800 in Cork City Sports, and it was a great meet. They had brought over two of the top Russians, two of the top in the world. I was in the race, and then there was two other. Kirsty McDermott, if anybody was around, she was really good, and Shireen Bailey, they were top British girls in the 800 at the time. So we ran the race. I got third, beat the two British girls, which was good. I'm absolutely amazed, and I ran 2:00:70, which was smashed the Irish record and qualified me for the Olympics, and that was like 2 weeks before the Olympics. So it was pretty tight. Going, yeah,
exactly. And just on that Irish record, so for 800 meters, guys, 2 laps of the track, 2:00.7, so you're ultimately looking at 2 laps of 60 seconds. How long did that record stand until Sonia O'Sullivan broke it?
I think it was probably about 10 years, and then Sonia broke it by 1/100th of a second.
God damn her.
It was pretty tight. And I'd in the Olympic final then, my second fastest race was 2:00:78, and then the following year in the Cork City Sports I ran 2:00:77 and 2:00:78. So I have 3 times to run 2:00:07, but and then I had my career was cut short.
I think we should go with that now, because there's so many happy times to talk about. So on the side, if we get to through a few injuries and what eventually curtailed your athletic career, you seem to pick up injuries a lot, Caroline.
Yes, and I think that might be because I trained pretty intensely and I worked full time. And I think the other factor is that now there's an awful lot more sports science around what you're doing, and your training is much more scientifically based. And I think physiotherapy has improved enormously. Back in the day, it was all machines. They put you on machines, so the idea of exercise rehab and strength and conditioning wasn't there as much. So I think that's a big factor as well. And I think as well what happened was I was training and then increased the intensity in probably 76, 77 when I went coaching with Mick, and I think probably did an awful lot of running, but probably didn't do enough strength work in the gym, probably didn't do enough stretching and all of those things around the running that I think athletes today would be an awful lot better at, and they would be much better.
You have more knowledge, yeah.
Supported. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The injury that eventually finished my career, but it came after a few things. So I'm sure if MRIs had existed back then, we would have been able to come to to find out about what it was a bit more, and could have seen exactly what was happening. So but anyway, like I had a great time in athletics. I did get injured, but I was very lucky that I happened to hit my rich vein of form right time for the Olympics. I mightn't have had a very long, I had a long career running internationally for Ireland, but a long international running career, if you know what I mean, in terms of on the international stage. But I was very lucky that I peaked and managed to get it all right in 1984, because that can be hard. The Olympics only comes around every 4 years, and you can be very unlucky, as I was in previous the European Championships and stuff like that. So I can't complain, I have to say.
But what eventually put you out of athletics then?
Okay, so it was a bit of a long took a while to happen, but what started it, in fact, was I was running my first Grand Prix race in 1985, the year after the Olympics, and I was in pretty good form at that stage because I was training for 800 that winter, and I was hoping to do quite well, but there was the Nice Grand Prix. It was actually the meet that Steve Cram broke the world record in. But what happened was, in the race, there was what I would describe as an inexperienced pacemaker who was in the outside lane and cut across and was too slow. Everybody bunched. One of my feet got caught behind somebody else's feet, and I tripped and went down on the track. Now, I'd never learned how to fall, so I would say everybody should learn how to fall. So I didn't fall very well. I landed on my elbow and shoved my elbow out through my shoulder, dislocated and fractured my shoulder. So not very nice, and it was pretty awful. And there was no.
As my old
no
coach
other
would have said, but did you get up and finish the race? I'm joking.
I tried. Actually, you know, if I had not tried to break my fall as I did, I probably, and you know, because I was obviously trying to get up as quickly as possible, it probably would have been better. But yeah, there were no other Irish people athletes at that meet, so and I had to fly back through London. So the only good thing is Steve Cram is such a nice man. Him and his team looked after me and carried my bags and did everything. And it was very nice. We're on British Airways flight back, and I had a little glass of champagne with their group as they celebrated his world record. So that's a slight little claim to fame, but really decent guy. But what happened after that then was it was a bad injury. It took me a long time to get over it, but I couldn't run fast because I couldn't move my arm, so I ran slow and did more mileage. I'm not a mileage person, so did more of that than I would have done. So I got a stress fracture after that. So that curtailed my activity for a bit, but then, so it was 85, but for the next, then 86, 87, 88, I kept on pulling a muscle called the tibialis posterior in. It's not in your posterior, it's in your lower leg. So it was a calf injury, a persistent calf injury, and I couldn't get rid of it. And we went to Harley Street to doctor over there, and his suggestion was to keep injecting steroids into it. So kept trying after 3 years, 3 further years of no racing, I thought I'd better I suppose call it quits and try and put the time into other areas. So I did some more studying for my job, my chartered surveyor. So I did some further study in that area, and I felt so guilty for giving up, but I just had to.
You couldn't.
Had to call it a day at that stage, you know.
Wasn't you didn't have a choice in it. Caroline, you mentioned there about how luckier people are now with both on the physio side with experts that know strength and conditioning better. And we spoke the other night about gyms, and we ended up breaking our hearts laughing because what everybody considers now to be available. Would you like to explain what we had to do to get into a gym if we could, and in particular what you had to do?
Oh, well, the first gym was the weights shed in Serpentine Avenue, which was literally and they take the weights outside and do some weights. That was the first gym I'd ever seen. But before that, I used to have to try and blag my way into. I was in Bolton Street, so I used to try and blag my way into Trinity, and I got in there because Phil Conway was doing circuit training on a Thursday, so they got to know me on that. So I just kept coming and getting in there. And then in UCD, I used to get in there because Sean Egan was on the desk. So
Sean Egan was a
hammer thrower.
Hammer thrower, yeah.
Yeah,
so
yeah. That's how I got in. So.
But it wasn't like there was an abundance of gyms in the city, or.
Oh God, no. No, they were the only gyms
They were the only gyms, yeah. And I was saying, by the time I came along, there was one in Belvedere College, and that's how we got in there. And then there was one in Ballyfermot College, but it was rough and ready. So you just had
Yeah.
to go where you could get in and who you knew, wasn't it, Caroline?
Yeah, it was who you knew. Yeah. In fact, Phil Conway, before he went into Trinity, he was hosting those circuit sessions in Belvedere, and I used to go in there as well. So
I'm going to move us on to what I think is the most exciting part, the Olympics. I've said this to everybody, if I was good enough to be Olympian, I'd have a tattoo on my forehead. I was Olympian. And that's why God did not make me good enough to be an Olympian. You can see Caroline did not go with that story and did not put a tattoo on her forehead. You competed in Los Angeles in the 1984 Olympics in a stadium of 100,000 people, folks.
mm-hmm.
And just to explain to people how serious you took it and to bring in your camera story, I think that's a must. You have to tell it.
Yeah. I suppose it's a strange story these days when people have cameras on their phones and they take pictures of everything. But I decided when I qualified that I was going to go over there and perform. I wasn't going to go over there just for the trip or just as a tourist. So I took the decision that I would not bring a camera, because in those days, the only people who had cameras were tourists, and I was not a tourist. So I have very few photographs at all, only a few that people gave me. So that was the first thing. I was serious. I wasn't on a trip or a tour. And the 100,000 people was an interesting thing, and I knew that was going to be an issue, and how I would cope with that, because the biggest meets that I would have been at would have had a couple of thousand people, not 100,000 people. So at the opening ceremony, which is another story, but I just spent my time standing on the field, looking around at 100,000 people and the noise and the field, so that when I came in to compete on the track, that I would, I would be used to it, and I would know exactly what it entailed. So just a couple of things like that to try and think ahead about those kinds of things and give yourself the best chance that you have.
And what happened on your exiting from the track that night, Caroline, with the wonderful organization of the Americans?
Oh yeah, well, the whole thing was a bit of a disaster from the athlete's perspective, because we had spent 3 or 4 hours in the boxing stadium, and we were supposed to be able to watch the opening ceremony on the TV, but the TVs broke down. So we were 3 or 4 hours sitting around looking at each other, and we weren't allowed to bring anything with us, carry anything, so there was no water. So it wasn't great either. Anyway, we eventually got in and did and that was great, to be in the opening ceremony of an Olympic Games. I dreamt of running in the Olympics when I was 10 years old. I had seen Lillian Board, she was an 800-meter runner from the UK, and I had decided at that age that I was going to run in the Olympics. So here it was in 1984, and I'd, actually got there. So that was great. But the Americans were great at, everything looks great, but they hadn't really thought too much about how you get 10,000 athletes out of the stadium, and they had buses and stuff like that, and we all were traipsing out, but at some stage maybe the buses ran out or whatever. Anyway, they decided to close the gate for the athletes getting out. They didn't tell anybody at the back of the queue. So it was a big crush, and myself, Roisin Smith was 3,000-meter runner that was there. She's a tiny little thing from Derry. The two of us were nearly walked over by these very large wrestlers. It seemed like they were about 7 feet and about, anyway, much bigger than any rugby player that you've seen, and it was absolutely awful. Got the bus back, got off the bus, and I threw up. Now, luckily enough, we were, a week or more before the athletics started, but it was not a good experience. That having been said, it was probably the only bad experience,
Except for then when you got off the bus, Caroline.
Oh yeah, well, threw up, but anyway.
I'd say that was all the upset of it all. Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah.
The other thing is, a lot of people think that, when you get to the Olympics, you've made it and your accommodation is fabulous, and, all your gear is fantastic and you're taking care of everything. You have got to share what happened to you there.
Oh, yeah. Well, in fairness, I will say to them that there was 3 of us qualified very late in the day, Irish-based athletes, which was very good at that stage. But anyway, so 2 weeks beforehand, and kind of we all qualified. So we all went, but so they may not have been expecting to have 7 Irish women on the Olympic team. But anyway, we were staying in UCLA in student accommodation, and we had an apartment, well, a kind of student accommodation, a sitting room, and then two bedrooms. So the 3 US based, well, the 3 middle distance runners had 1 bedroom, and then we went into this other bedroom for the 3 Irish girls, and Patricia Walsh, the discus thrower, and it was faced with 2 sets of bunk beds. Now, when you're an international athlete and you're at an international competition, you spend most of the time that you're not training on your bed. So I just said, I'm not sleeping in a bunk bed. There is no way, for the most important competition in my life, I'm sleeping in a bunk bed. So what we did ourselves was we actually dismantled the bunk beds and brought 2 of the beds out into the sitting room and created a kind of an extra bedroom out there with, I don't know, a bookcase or something like that. But yeah, that's what we had to do, because we were there in the Olympic Village, I don't know, for 3 or 4 weeks, and you know, there's no way I'm crawling on top of a bunk bed
for 3 weeks. Yeah. And the preparations that were done in relation to getting you running gear.
Oh yeah. Well, again, they probably weren't expecting track athletes. They were probably, you know, there was Kerry Mays running the marathon, and then there was a couple of others. But and I suppose this is the difference between the Olympic Council and Athletics Ireland would be more into it. But yeah, they turned up with kind of running shorts, I would say. But I always wore track gear, which is the kind of what we call knicker shorts, the stretchy ones. Anyway, so they were going to make me run in my Olympic final in a pair of shorts that I would wear to the beach. So, and the others felt the same way. So the athletics team manager was sent off to buy, to see if you could get some Adidas, we're sponsoring thing, shorts. So we ended up wearing white shorts. We didn't wear the other ones, and the singlets weren't great. So we wore the men's singlet because the women's were not suitable. So yeah.
These are the joys and thrills of being an international runner, running in the Olympics, guys. You get to wear a pair of running knickers that were bought for you last minute, and then you have to take a man's singlet. So that was the thrill of it. Oh, yeah. For you, Caroline, it was a superb Olympics. You get to run, you've yourself prepared, you're determined to get out of the heats, but not only do you get out of the heats, you get out of the semi and you get into the final. So you get to run in that magnificent huge stadium 3 times. What was the atmosphere like? What were those getting from heat to semi to final? What was it like for you?
So I kind of knew that I should get through the heats. That wasn't just looking at the makeup of the race, so that was okay. So I was pretty confident about that, and I had to run a 2:03 or something to get through that. And I was in that heat with the ultimate winner, Doina Malinte. She was first, I was second. I got to see a good bit of her from behind that weekend. So, and then the semi-final then was a more tactical race, and that's what I really enjoyed about 800 was, you know, being involved in tactical races and being able to run them differently. But that was pretty difficult race. I got spiked twice, so I have a little scar on my shin from the Olympics. So I have no tattoos, Susan. I do have a little scar.
As good as a tattoo. Yeah, you can point at that all the time. You should just arrow a tattoo down to it.
Yeah, it's very faint now, but yeah. So obviously I didn't notice that at the time, but yeah, 4 of us then broke away towards the end of that, and qualification was okay. There was a Dutch girl in there, and I reckon she was the one. She was ranked ahead of me, so beating her was, you know, what got me into the final. And then the final was something else, and I spoke about the 100,000 people in
Caroline,
the stadium.
will I show I'll show the race first, and you can gather your thoughts. Is that okay?
Yeah, if I remember before on the starting line thinking there, I don't know, as well as 100,000 people in the stadium, there's 100 million people watching this, but actually it's a very private event. That was only just between 8 of us. Nobody else mattered. Nobody in the stadium mattered. Nobody at home on TV mattered. It was just the 8 people there. So on the first lap, I'm in a pretty good position, and I'm pretty comfortable.
No, Caroline, you can talk.
All right. Yeah, so there I am. It's Gabriella Dorio, the Italian, is taking it out pretty quickly there, and I'm tucked in there, making sure not to go through too fast. Remember, I'd only run 2 800s, decent 800s before the Olympics, and now I've doubled my 800s between the heat and the semi-final. So
and you probably went through in what, about 58, Caroline?
Probably about that, yeah.
They went through in 57, and there you are.
Yeah, there I am there. So I'm feeling pretty comfortable at this stage. I'm probably a stride behind where I would want to be. So I then put in my effort there to get back in line with them, and around that between 600 and 700 I'm feeling pretty okay. I'm not boxed in, and I'm feeling like I'm not going to win the race or anything, but coming off the bend here, I thought I had a chance of getting 5th here. Ruth Wysocki was miles behind, so I thought she was okay. But at about 710 meters, I hit the wall, and my lack of, I suppose, endurance training probably, and the lack of experience of the 800 told. So unfortunately, I was 8th, but at the same time, you know, I was more or less on my PB, so I couldn't complain about that. I'd given it my best shot. The other thing, I was really wrecked at the end of that. To get out of the stadium in the Coliseum, you had to walk halfway up the seating bank. At least it seemed like that. I'm not sure. Maybe it was 40 steps. But I don't know. I think it must have been at least 15 or 20 minutes before I could actually leave and walk up those steps, because I'd given it absolutely everything. And you know, that I suppose is what you know, I would say I'm proud of. I went over there and I ran at my best. I gave it my all, and I didn't leave anything on the track.
Yeah, I think, you know, for an athlete of your caliber, getting 3 800 races in a row, to get to so close to your PB on that last day in the final, I'm surprised you didn't have to crawl up that ramp, Caroline. You did absolutely super. Yeah. Because even you hadn't got a real endurance background to your training. It was more the speed side. So even athletes that do the endurance, getting 3 of that standard 800s in a row at that level is really tough. And you ran them all like in close to your...
Yeah, well, I was comfortable in the heat. And I was comfortable enough in the semi-final, but it was a 203, a 202 rest day, and then you know, a 2 flat. So yeah, I absolutely did my best there. Yeah, I suppose my background, you know, from the training was speed endurance, and Crusaders was a real track and field club back in those days. There wasn't really too much cross country.
No, there's a lot more there.
Yeah, it was all reps on the track and fartlek. The odd long run, but I would have done a run. Long run every day, but fartlek and, you know, track repetitions was that's what I loved.
Mm-hmm. And actually, just before the Olympics, you have a celebrity story that we definitely can't miss out on.
Yeah. I mean, the US was a very good place for Irish people to, you know, to be competing in the Olympics, because there was huge support from the diaspora over there. And I don't know if people will know, but Fionnuala Flanagan is a kind of film actress. She was in Waking Ned, and she was Brendan Gleeson's, thinking what was she in? She was Brendan Gleeson's mother in The Guard. Anyway, she's based in Los Angeles, and her husband, I'm not sure if he's Irish or not, but anyway, they lived on Mulholland Drive. So she was a big supporter of the Irish athletics team. And the first thing that happened was, after my Olympic final, I was on the bus, came back to the Olympic Village, actually got my picture taken myself, and Joachim Cruz, who won the men's 800, he beat Seb Coe that time. He was on the bus as well. We got off the bus, and the Irish boxers or cyclists were saying, "Come on, we're going to Fionnuala Flanagan's house in Mulholland Drive. She's having a party for everybody." So in the gear, onto the other bus, and off to the party in on Mulholland Drive. So
still in your track gear, Caroline.
Still in my, yeah, exactly. But you know, people love, you know, if you're an athlete, you turning up in the track gear to the thing. So I thought this was great. But I mean, she had lots of people there. We just hung out ourselves, and I think she had a waterbed somewhere or other. I just do remember lots of boxers and cyclists and athletes jumping around on the waterbed. It's a bit embarrassing when I was 23 at the time. I should have known an awful lot better. But anyway, but the really amazing thing that Fionnuala Flanagan did for us was she was a member of Jane Fonda's gym. And at this stage in the 80s, Jane Fonda was the guru of, you know, aerobics and workouts, and they'd only just started. She was the first one. Anyway, Fionnuala organised for us to do an aerobics session with Jane Fonda, and her best teacher. So we were in doing with her. Not only that, afterwards she gave us some free gear, but we also went for breakfast. So I sat beside Jane Fonda at breakfast in LA, and we had a great chat. Met her husband, met her son. She was lovely, an absolutely lovely woman. And I kind of thought, you know, that she would be very reactionary and opinionated and everything, because she was such a strong person. But actually, she was just so lovely, and she was she listened to everybody. She wasn't dominating it at all. I thought she was just fabulous, and it's lovely. It was my that's my Hollywood story.
But your only sad thing about that was you hadn't got the camera.
Somebody had I have a picture somewhere of that. Somewhere. I'll have to go search for it one of these days.
Absolutely, yeah, that's a time for it. That would be up there with my Olympic final. Picture of me running in the Olympic final. Absolutely.
Yeah, it was nice.
It's from listening to you, and I had a little chat with Maria as well. Your international experiences seemed to have a bit of crack with them as well. And don't get me wrong, I know how serious you were about your athletics and Maria, but you girls seemed to enjoy your time when you were abroad.
We did, and we weren't wild or anything like that. But
no, I didn't mean
always. But you'd always laughing. Maria was a short hurdler, and before Derval O'Rourke, there was Maria Hetherington, and Maria I always said she would have run through a brick wall if they put one in front of her when she was running through her hurdle. She was really, if you don't mind me saying so, Maria, an aggressive hurdler. I think she was great. But we had a great bunch of women who were competing at that stage. Great crack. Spent most of our time laughing, and didn't do anything particularly wild, but it was really enjoyable, you know.
And to be honest, that's exactly what Maria said. She said her memory of being away with you and the other girls on international duties was that you all just seemed to laugh all the time. It was just the crack.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's really important, because you can, overthink it, and you know, I would have had that bad experience in the beginning of '84 when I wasn't running well over 400. So just overthinking it. And so having people around who are going to, you know, that you can let off steam with and relax is very good. And it always struck me that Thomas Barr, he always seems to enjoy his athletics before his races. He always seems to be relaxed and, you know, taking the view that it's actually quite a simple sport to do. You know, okay, you've got to hit your strides and whatever, but you know what you've got to do, and you just get out there and do it, and don't overthink it. You put all the work in beforehand, and you just come out, enjoy it, and do your best. And there's a lot of athletes suffered from huge, you know, anxiety and nerves beforehand. You had to get nervous, all right, but yeah, it was good. The team thing was good.
Yeah, and you enjoyed it. And the team thing with Crusaders at the time, I mean, a lot of people on this would be more recent to joining Crusaders. So
very few would be as old as me on this now, but anyway.
I know, I can see. No, there's a fair few there. All right, don't be worrying, Caroline, that are older than you. But as you said there earlier, Crusaders were absolutely known for being track and field, and the women in particular in Dublin, between DCH and Crusaders, to a lesser extent DSD, I think it was just DCH and Crusaders, weren't it, that you were the leaders in track and field in the country?
Oh, absolutely. The 1980s particularly was really, really strong Crusaders team in track and field. And Crusaders from the 1950s and the 1960s had a long history of you know, Olympic participation in, you know, 400s and 800s as well. And it was a real track and field club. But yeah, the 80s was really important because you had the fun running kind of thing started then, and there was huge coverage, and the media coverage of athletics was it's not social media, but the newspapers was full of athletics. Like, there'd be big write-ups about the schools competitions and everything. It was really, really high profile at the time, and Crusaders were at the top of the game, and they would have been winning the leagues. Very strong team across all events as well. It was a good high point for Crusaders, and they would have competed in Europe, the European clubs, teams, competitions at the time as well.
A lot, yeah. So guys and gals, you've just got a bit to move up to, you know, this. I'll be for you is moving into that type of level. Caroline, I'm going to just move you on to your academic side and your work. Outside of athletics, you've had a successful work career. Would you attribute any of your success in any way to your athletics?
Well, I suppose, like, I'm kind of one of those people who gives everything 110%. So if I'm doing anything, I can't do it badly. I have to do it, you know, very intensely. So not in school, mind you, but in college, in Bolton Street, and then in work. So anything I'm doing, I go a bit over the top, if the truth be known. I just need to be careful about it. So pretty intense. So those kind of skills that you are, that kind of work ethic that you had from athletics, if you bring that into a work career, that can help you too. So I suppose there's that. Funny story about the job actually was I started a new job 4 weeks before the Olympics. And the interview for the job was it was my dream job. It was in AIB Investment Managers. It was in property investment. So I'm a chartered surveyor. I've worked in property investment all my life, but I had been working in a small estate agency firm at the time. So I got the dream job, and in the interview they said somebody's going on holidays, and we absolutely need somebody to cover August or whatever. So I was in the job 2 weeks, and I qualified for the. They asked me in the interview, how's your athletics going? Are you going to qualify for the Olympics? No, says I'm running awfully over 400. So no, I'd be grand. so anyway, I go into the job and then go off down to Cork and qualify for the Olympics. And next day, knock on the boss's office. Sorry, can I go to the Olympics? Of course, they were delighted and they were great support. But yeah, it's kind of a funny story at the time.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think the work ethic is the big thing that you bring, and a sense of confidence as well in your own abilities, because you know when you're an athlete, you're out there doing it by yourself. Nobody else is doing it for you. So you get you know, confidence from that. But I wouldn't say now, like there may be other sports where your contacts in sport might be helpful career-wise, but not in that way. So no direct correlation.
Other than your confidence and your
But I think it's the work ethic.
The work ethic of training that you know you have to do. So yeah, you bring that in.
Exactly, because you're pretty committed.
You
know, so you just spread that around.
It's interesting that you said there 4 weeks before the Olympics you end up going for a new you know, an interview, you get a new job and everything, and it's a question I hadn't thought of asking you. At any stage did you contemplate going full-time in athletics, or was that ever an option then for you then?
So it wasn't an option after 1985. So you know, when I had that my first Grand Prix race, you know, I had that fall. So I don't know if the following year I might have said, will I give this a go full time, depending on how it was going to go, because I was flying that. You know when you're flying and training and you're doing 400 reps and you're flying down the back straight, your feet are barely, you know, touching the ground, and you think this is fabulous. Mind you, you do have the days where you feel like you're waddling like a duck, but I was really good in training, and I felt very confident that I would break 2 minutes that year, so it wasn't an option then. But you know, if things had been different, it might very well have been. But I never trained full time at all. It was always just once a day, pretty intense. So and a rest day as well. So 6 times a week.
6 days a week.
Yeah.
And the other thing to note, folks, is that there were none of the go faster spikes or runners in Caroline's day. We talked of that, which would have been interesting, Caroline, to go back.
Well, that is that is very interesting. It was very interesting. I haven't seen any science around it, but just to know what the figures are. But I know people say it's kind of like, you know, getting a better pole vault pole or something like that. But there's something inherently, I don't know.
I would have been.
I think running is just such a pure sport. To have anything interfering with it is strange. But anyway, you've got to move with the times, and if everybody has access to them, that's I suppose that's fine. It's a level playing field then.
Exactly. Once it's the level playing field, folks. Put you on note. We're coming up to the hour, and I said I'd have Caroline done in an hour, but that was the quickest hour ever. But if anybody has a question, get it ready now, or speak now, or forever keep quiet. I'm sure I have covered nearly everything. Jean-Pierre is breaking his heart laughing there at me there, thinking, would somebody shut Susan up? Yes, somebody can occasionally shut me up. So if you haven't, I do have a question for Caroline, and it is one directly for you. So now, in hindsight, would you have any advice for the younger Caroline O'Shea?
I suppose I would say to myself, enjoy it. When I went to the Olympics, I thought I was going to go. That was my first of 3 in my head plans. So enjoy it, while you can. I would say be careful about increasing intensity in training, and make sure that it's gradual. I think that might have helped, not give me so many injuries. I would say to myself, do the stretching, do the conditioning work, all of the bits around it. do it. I think, and I would say, be kind to yourself. Don't beat you. I felt very bad when I gave up, and I would say to myself, you know, you gave it your all. So so I suppose that's what I'd say to myself.
Okay, I do have another question here from you from one of the girls, from Lisa, and she's just now, I know the answer to this, she's just asking, do you still run or do you do any other sport? You might explain why.
Oh yeah, so I have 2 replaced hips. I had them replaced when I was 46 and 48, but it's not too bad. My father had his replaced too. So I reckon that running around in circles on the track probably brought forward that condition that I had to have my hips replaced. I was always going to have to do it, so it was probably a bit earlier. But and I'd had problems with my back as well as a result of a lack of mobility in my hips. So I don't run now, unfortunately. I thought I would run every day of my life, but that is not to be. But I go to the gym, do Pilates. In the gym, I do the cross trainer, and during lockdown, I bought myself a second-hand cross trainer. So I'm mad in relation to that. So I'm still trying to do the sessions that I would have done, you know, when I was training on the cross trainer. So I would have 10 300s, and I'd have a tempo run, and I'd have a bit of a fartlek session as well, and measure it all and try and push myself. So it's not the same as getting out and running in the fresh air, but it keeps me fit, and it gives me the feeling that I'm running even if I'm not. I don't like exercising sitting down, so I don't like cycling or can't stand swimming. So the cross trainer is the nearest thing I can get to running. So that's what I do at the moment. So.
Go-to thing. That's exactly. Mike was doing his sessions on the cross trainer this week, and exactly what you said, Caroline. He was doing his 400s on the cross trainer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the other thing, like that I think is good about that is that as I get, I'm obviously ancient at this stage, but I can also move fast on the cross trainer, and you know it's kind of harder as you get older with your joints to to sprint and do stuff like that. I think it's really important as you get older to keep moving fast, because you don't want to keep slowing down. So a big thing about that, so I can run fast on the cross trainer without any of the adverse impacts on the joints. So
exactly, yeah. Folks, any other comments or messages? I've no more coming through. Maria Hetherington, you're sitting there nice and quiet. There's nothing, there's no little secret little infos you want to fill in here, seeing as the two of you were compatriots both in the club and on the Irish team.
Oh, I think Caroline and I would have to go for a glass of wine to have that one.
Oh, and we could video that.
That sounds like a great idea, and hopefully before too long we'll be able to do that. Fingers crossed.
I really enjoyed that, Caroline, because I have great memories of the DCH girls and the Crusaders girls, and although we were always in competition, we so looked forward to seeing you all, and we had great respect for you and great fun. And when we were always on trips together. I mean, it was DCH ladies and Crusaders ladies, and we all had it all. I don't know if you remember, was it Mary Purcell doing the hokey pokey up in Denmark at one international or something, much to the amusement of the Danes. We had great fun. Yeah. And it was great. And Mary Barnwell, Ruth Algar, you remember Ruth Algar, such a nice woman. And it was just great to be away with trips like that. We had so many great trips, and I remember it fondly. It was great being there.
Great time.
Thanks, Maria. Thanks for sharing that. What's gas is I completely forgot that you weren't Crusaders. Crusaders you hadn't, Caroline, and you were saying nothing.
No.
You're only after, that's the penny's only after dropping with me there that you get me. And now you have come into our camp as a coach.
I have come into your camp. I have indeed.
There you are now.
We're all red now instead of blue. Is that it, Maria?
Yes. All red instead of blue.
That's great. If I see a bit of blue on you now, I'll be slagging you off. Right, guys. We're just coming up to 9 o'clock, and I said I'd wrap this up in an hour, so we've done pretty well. Caroline, I want to thank you so much. That was absolutely great, and we're getting lots of bullabusses and rounds of applause there.
Thank you very much.
And thank you so much for doing this for us. We really enjoyed it. Particularly loved all the little stories about the Olympics. I find them fascinating, and we all have a view of the Olympics, you know, and then you get the actual inside information is so great. So thank you. We will no doubt, please God, we will be seeing you when we get to open our new clubhouse.
That'll be brilliant, and congratulations on that and all the hard work. That is fabulous.
Yeah, fingers crossed now that that'll, as soon as this COVID and we all get our injections in our arms, we'll all be back to a bit of normality, and we'll see you down at the track and in the new clubhouse. In the meantime, thanks everybody for turning up and for taking part. You're getting lovely, and thanks very much, Caroline, inspiring. You're getting all these lovely little messages.
Oh, thank you.
So thank you for sharing so much with us, and we look forward to seeing you soon. And to the rest of Crusaders, Caroline will be looking forward to seeing all of you competing, keeping the name of Crusaders out there.
Great. Thank you very much. And actually, it was very pleasant. I haven't thought about a lot of this stuff for a long time because you get caught up in the day-to-day. So I enjoyed it too. Thank you very much, Susan.
Great.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Caroline.
Thank you, Caroline.